Hello and welcome to another. I don't know what to call it because it's the first time. It's a pilot program, but I'm excited to anyone actually on the CT Dice network. My name is CT Dice, and with me to talk some football. And I said football because it's actually football. Well, we're in the Americas, so we can also use soccer. But if you want to know what we're talking about and we're talking football, it's basically football. The other one, it's something else. And with me to talk about it, I'm going to introduce my friend here, Daniel, and we're going to get into some soccer. It's going to be a programming. We're still working on the title for it, but we're going to get into it. You want to introduce yourself to the people?
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I have been a big football or soccer fan for heaven knows how long. And it is my pleasure to be here on this pilot program, the maiden edition, or the maiden episode, I would want to say. And it is my hope that it would be as informative, it would be as enjoyable for everyone watching. And for those that do not agree with the things we are likely going to say,
Perfect. That's exactly the people that we want on this channel.
you can you can have a tete-a-tete in the comment section, and we'll be more than happy to at least chip in and then argue with you if you want to. But all in all, we hope we give you the entertainment value that the program seeks to bring across. And just enjoy yourself, sit back, and enjoy some of our hot takes.
Okay. Absolutely. So we're gonna get into it. The first thing I wanted to do is for us to basically on here kind of talk about or think about, just put out some names for what you think this is gonna be about. Like just to throw out some names. I've actually thought about it much. I've thought about stuff like soccer roundup, but I'm like soccer. I'm not very comfortable calling this soccer.
I think personally, I have vehemently been against anybody that calls it soccer. And I would want to maintain that stance because I do not understand why the rest of the world would call this game football and just the US, Canada, and Australia decide to call it something else. So
they want to be unique.
This uniqueness is not working for
Okay, we're going to ponder on the name, but what this is basically a football roundup or a football conversation, a football podcast with myself, CT Dice, and Daniel. And we're going to get right into it. As we go, you're going to find a title or something for it, but we're going to work on a title for this basically. But it's basically a football talk show on the CT Dice basically sports network. And I'm going to get right into it. We're going to get right into it. It's basically the international break in European leagues. We're going to be focusing on the top leagues. If you want us to talk about you might as well become one of the top leagues. For the other leagues that might be wondering why they are not on the show. But we're going to be focusing a lot on the Champions League, the Premier League, maybe a little bit of the German Bundesliga, the Spanish La Liga, some international football if need be, and also just basically football talk in general. And right now is the international break. Most players are currently playing for their countries. So I wanted to take this time to take a step back and take a look at what we think, primarily on the English Premier League so far. And also, we're going to take a quick look at the top transfers in the world in club football and actually give our takes on how we think that's going to impact the season. It's going to be interesting. The English Premier League has already played 3 games. Spanish League, most of the leagues have played a few games before going on the international break. So we'll just take a look into it. So let's start. I'll allow you to go first. What are your thoughts so far on the English Premier League so far? And then we can go at the end of that and talk about the transfers just as the transfer break ended.
Okay, thank you very much, CT. I think before I dive into the Premier League or the English Premier League, since we are still looking for a name,
again,
our audience can suggest names for us in the comment section too.
Yes, I would love that. If you have any interesting names that you want to give a football talk show, that might just be what I name it for this pilot episode. But for a football talk show, definitely I'll be looking at comments. I'll be looking at any social media suggestions, whatever you think about it. Anything is basically up at this moment to be considered.
Fantastic. So now to the English Premier League. I think it started on a very good foot. There are a few obvious things that have happened that we were expecting to happen, like Man City doing what they are doing at the moment. In the past, or over the past few seasons, past 4 to 5 seasons, it hasn't been this way. Oftentimes, Man City starts quite slow, and then they just build up as the season grows on, somewhere around December, January onwards. But this time around, they seem to have hit the ground running from scratch. And as Pep mentioned, for him, the first 3 games that have been played are just preseason.
3-0 preseason.
Exactly.
7 goals. Okay.
I think we are getting an impression of what it's likely to look like. And I am sure the managers that are sweating the most in this case are the likes of Arteta and maybe Arne Slot, who has also started quite well. Because it looks like Pep is not slowing down anytime soon for anybody. So from at least from the top looking below, the season has started quite well, at least for the usual suspects. City is the overwhelming number 1 favourite to win it again for the 5th time in a row, which will, I would want to say, or I believe, cement Pep's legend in the game at large and in the Premier League as one of the all-time greats. Very, very, very up there with Alex Ferguson in terms of what he's been able to do in the span of 7 years with Manchester City. But outside Man City, who are like the obvious, there's Arsenal, who we are at least looking forward to push like they've done in the past 2 seasons against Man City. And there's Liverpool, who seems to be playing a little more directly. I think when Klopp left, there were a few questions as to whether they can still sustain the energy they used to have when they were going neck to neck with Man City some seasons back. And if the first 3 games are anything to go by, then it looks like Liverpool is also on the right track. Not much has changed in terms of the structure, because almost every player that was there, or almost all the players that have been there with Klopp, are still the ones there, minus maybe by a few additions, like Chiesa, who is joining from Juventus, and who is also like the profile of what Arne Slot seems to be doing at the moment. Very direct, not too many tricks. You get the ball straight into the box, and he just adds to an already lethal front line for Liverpool, and I am tipping them to also do quite good going forward. And when we look at the 2 fallen giants, Manchester United and Chelsea, we are not too sure as to how things are going to play out. It looks like Ten Hag, of course, over the past few days, he's been talking a lot about how outside of Man City, he's the one that has won the most trophies.
One thing, I'm going to be having a lot of fun. Sorry for cutting you off there. There are 2 things you have already said that is going to be happening a lot when you watch this show with me. One is the argument I will make that Pep Guardiola is one of the biggest frauds ever to coach the game. The second one I would make is that the pain of Manchester United gets me very excited. So you can go ahead. So if you see me smile anytime something about Manchester United or Ten Hag is said, just, it's what's going to be on this show. So sorry about cutting you short. Yeah.
The show is not meant to be a very structured one, so we can always interject and then make sure it feels like the beer parlor conversations we have in the viewing centers.
Yeah.
Go to a viewing center and then someone tells you one fake stat.
But we're not going to be doing fake stats, because I'm gonna be checking that, and you can check us also in the comment section. That's all right. You can actually whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. The whole aim is to give the audience a feel of what we experienced growing up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Back to the topic. At least Ten Hag has been on a run, saying that he has won the most trophies outside of Man City.
All this what we call paper trophies. Paper cups. So it is he wants to convince us that paper cups are actual trophies, the ones that they make on the side of the road. But it's okay. He has a right to speak. We are in a world of freedom of speech.
Absolutely. And on the one hand, yes, that is what he wants to say to at least make himself feel good. But on the other,
sorry about that. The only people paying for this is Manchester United fans, by the way, not really Ten Hag.
Was Manchester United is one of the clubs I despise with the greatest of contempt. So,
By the way, guys, this is not a This is not a shame Manchester United or contempt or whatever Man United. But Man United fans have all the rights to come at us or whatever, but it's just so much fun. Just go ahead, yeah.
Maybe just maybe going forward we might have a diverse panel of
Hope-
which will have me.
I would try to do that, but it still doesn't change the fact that if you're a Manchester United fan, that's what you're going to be getting on this show. It's
Plus that if
Yeah.
you banter back, you banter back.
yeah.
No, but then on the one hand, of course, that is what Ten Hag would want to see because factually it looks like it, and on the other hand, it is just a testament to how low Manchester has sunk since 2013 when Sir Alex Ferguson left, right? And it's just what it is, unfortunately. So with Manchester, we don't know. Again, Manchester, Chelsea, these two are now like a pale shadow of themselves, and we just do not know what to expect of them as the season unfolds. So it is left to be seen as to how Chelsea is also going to do. And Ten Hag has also promised that he's going to win a trophy by the end of the season. So
Mr. Potential.
So we look,
3 years later, we are still promising.
So at the moment, the season has started on a very good foot, and I'm just looking forward to this weekend because the season resumes after the international break this weekend for the fixtures ahead. For the newcomers that have come in, Sunderland, Leicester City, and this last one. Sunderland, Leicester City, and
Ipswich Town.
Right, with these three that have come in, of course, I am tipping Leicester City to stay up, given the fact that they left to the Championship just 2 seasons ago. So, and then they have the Premier League experience. They still have some of the old heads available, like Wilfred Ndidi, Albright, and then of course the great Jamie Vardy. So there's still that spine that exists that I believe can, and even Faiz, their defender, even though he's a terrible defender. I tip Leicester to stay. Southampton hasn't started on a good foot, and a few of the games that I have watched, they seem to be very naive with how they play. So I'm not too sure as to whether they'll be able to survive, but we'll leave that to time to see. And for Ipswich, they started out guns blazing against Liverpool, but then the inexperience still came across at the end of the day, and Liverpool didn't need to do much.
So you think 2 of them is going to go down, Ipswich and Sunderland, and Leicester could be the one actually staying up?
If the first 3 games are anything to go by, I am highly suspecting these 2, Southampton and Ipswich, to go back down by the end of the season. But then the season is extremely young, so we have to leave it to time to see how things will play out. And I guess as the weeks unfold, we'll still come here to have conversations. And things might.
And which team would you think would take Leicester's place to go down to the Championship based on 3 weeks?
Based on the first 3 weeks, Everton. Everton has been they've been horrendous. So, I am one of the biggest. I don't know whether it would sound controversial or not. One of the biggest Sean Dyche fans, which is Everton's current coach. I call him the Ginger Mourinho because he has a ginger hair. He's like a ginger person, and his tactics are like from the Barclays Premier League days, where you do not need to have too much of the possession, but when you have the ball, you should know what you are doing with it, right? And last season he did some Everton, and I was tipping them to do quite well this season, but with the first 3 games, I am just not too sure. And with the looming points deduction that they are likely to get from the Premier League, that equally adds to the uncertainty. So we'll see how things will.
Did they get the point deduction last season, or it's still hanging over their head like Man City?
They got point deduction last season, and then there are talks of a possible deduction again this season. Right, so
I don't think they will get it. If they get any point deductions this season, I don't think they get away from that.
Exactly, because with
I thought they were done with the point deductions and they escaped there.
Yeah, they were fortunate last season, and they started the season on a very, very bad foot, at least with the first 3 games. And then there are still talks of a possible point deduction. So should that happen, then there's no way for them, unless they turn the corner miraculously out of again, it's just 3 games. So 3 out of 38 games is way too early extremely too premature to make these kinds of suggestions. But with the
Oh
first,
no,
I'm
it,
tipping 3 to go down.
it's just a fun thing that I like to do is always to take a look and see what I think, right? But no, that's interesting. You just gave when I think of the Premier League this season, in my opinion, it's been interesting. But there are a few highlights that are interesting to me that I was looking at going into the season. One was how would Liverpool play without Jurgen Klopp for the first time in a long time? Comes Arne Slot. And I will tell you now, 3 games in and watching his press conferences, I am sold on Arne Slot. He's like, for me, the direct opposite of Eric Ten Hag. And isn't that just beautiful, right? The guy that comes in and tells you this is a really quality team, and please don't be shy to put pressure on me. You know what I mean? Like, I expect to do well. You know, he can see what's actually going on. A direct opposite of 3 years in, and we're still going to be waiting for results going on at Manchester United.
Yeah, for starters, yes, and Slot has started on a very good foot. He's played like very beautiful football, direct, straight to the point. You get your points, you move on. I wouldn't say I'm sold just yet, because we saw Postecoglou last season and how he started with Spurs. And then how he...
Oh no, Postecoglou played no defense, extreme high line. Like, those are not winning formulas for me. Those are not the things that I care one bit about. He can win 10 straight games. I'm not putting... He's not coming anywhere near my team. For me personally, you know what I mean?
That is a very good point.
So for me, Arne Slot is basically, like, for me, it's not just about on the field for Arne Slot. Like, I listen to his press conferences, and that is like me speaking. So it's a little bit of bias for me, right? It's like, for me, it's the ability to take accountability and be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
If Liverpool, he could have had a very easy excuse and be like, it's my first year, I gotta learn, I gotta adjust. But to come in and take that responsibility, like, this is a quality team. And that's one thing I give respect to Jurgen Klopp as well, is leaving such a quality team as well, without actually jeopardizing the future of the team, just like Pep Guardiola is doing, just to win right now, right? Guardiola can tell you all he wants last year about, we have not spent the most money since 2000. Oh, let's wipe out all the years before that and your 115 charges and buying 15 defenders. That's an exaggeration. Or $50 million or more. You can't coach defense for, even if your life depended on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my point is, I like that level of accountability, because he can just come and be like, it's my first year. I need to get to know the players. I need to set up my system. They need to listen to me. But he comes in, and the previous coach set up a good base, and he could have just gone with that excuse, so that if he comes second, it's going to be like, we did great. But I think he comes in with this mentality, and even his players believe they can win the league this year. And for me, that is the mindset. It's like, no, this is my first year, but you guys are really good. Nothing is really changing here, and I'm not buying into the excuse of waiting 3 years to be like, I won paper cups or things like that. But that would be my opinion on the transition from Jurgen Klopp to Arne Slot, which was something I was very curious about, because I heard him say this during the summer, but I was like, I wanted to see it play out, and it's actually playing out in terms of the confidence his players has, and he's not approaching the game like, I'm trying to learn, or no, he's getting down to work right away. And I think Liverpool is going to, in my opinion, I thought Arsenal would be the biggest competitors to Man City, but now just seeing how that organization and how the mentality they have going into the year, I think Liverpool might be the biggest threat to Manchester City. The other thing is Man City being the favorite as well. I always knew Man City would probably be good. I actually had a feeling Erling Haaland would be really good, because my opinion about that was that he didn't play in the Euros, and everybody played in the Euros, and he's just been waiting to go at guys in the Premier League. So in a way, I'm not shocked that he started so well, and I think that will be key for them. The ability for him to be waiting, fully fit, energized. Everybody has gone to the Euros. He has not been talked about for months. I think that actually benefits Man City a lot. Am I rooting for them? I think it's going to be a difficult season. They've played top-level games for the last 4 years deep into the season. It's going to be a tough season, but they do have depth and really good players. And I think bringing back Gundogan is just not fair. Like what the heck is going on out here? We just think, like, let's make this thing fair. He comes back on a free transfer. Like, was that planned? Like, did they have a meeting? I'm going to come back 1 year into the, like, what's going on here? Like, you're kidding me. But I do get it. They're a quality team. Guardiola is a quality coach. Definitely not a top 5 coach, in my opinion. That's a media hype and a very... I'm looking at all the Sky Sports, all the big pundits. Like, you guys are just kissing his ass, and he's the biggest fraud. Like, I can't stand when they call him the top manager or the best manager in the world. Like, goodness, he sold you guys on this. Did he really sell you guys on we're not the highest spending team since so and so year? Like, my goodness. And they eat it up. Like, these pundits eat it up. Like, best manager, you kidding me? Like, he can't even bring one quality defender from the academy. Look at what Jurgen Klopp does and did with Liverpool. Like, you guys kidding me that this guy is better than Jurgen Klopp? You got your Mourinho?
Maybe just maybe.
What? Carlo Ancelotti? Are you kidding me?
You're not being fair. You're not being fair to Pep. In a sense,
I said he's a top coach. He's definitely not top 3.
No,
I can call 3 coaches that I would argue all day. That's my thing. Carlo Ancelotti, like, I don't even know the argument you will make. Carlo Ancelotti took up the challenge with Everton, and you could see the change in Everton in a few months. Pep Guardiola is scared. He wouldn't even take a job that does not allow him to use.
No, this particular argument, I wouldn't want this conversation to be about Pep, even though I know it can usually when people talk about
it will happen. But I digress, because that's one of my observations. Okay. Thank you for bringing me back in line. Let's get back into the conversation of the day, because if I start talking about Pep and Manchester United, we're not going to end here. Thank you very much. That's why I have you here on the show.
Whole segments for just Pep. So
we should do like, it should be like a whole 2 hours. It's hours, but okay. My point is, he's not a top 3 coach, and then I move on. The other things that I noticed in the season, obviously, Arsenal going into the season, I thought they're going to be pretty good. They have been all right, dropping a point, but it's a long season, so we'll see how that goes. I still think their position good. I'm just talking about the relegation side. I don't have too many thoughts about the teams that just got up. I got to see more. I didn't really follow the championship last year, so I can't say much about those teams. I got to watch them play in the Premier League to have an opinion about it. The other big top clubs that I just wanted to mention, Chelsea. There's the whole thing right now going on with the ownership at Chelsea between the 2 major stakeholders. So that's going to be a whole distraction all year. I'm telling you guys, it's going to be, no matter where you look, with the top ranking members fighting and doing all that whole leadership shareholder stuff, there's going to be a lot of distractions in Chelsea this year. For me personally, I'm a Chelsea guy, but I left with Roman Abramovich. Like, I came with him and I left with him. So if the whole Ukraine thing happened and the whole Ukraine-Russia thing, England also kicked me away. So they kicked Roman Abramovich away, they kicked me away. So guys, even though I have a soft spot for Chelsea, I am just like Roman Abramovich. I'm watching from far away. I'm watching from a distance. So they kicked him away. They kicked me away. I'm all right with that. I'm not doing all these new things going on at Chelsea. I'm like him. If he can leave the club, I can also leave the club as well. So that's what I think about Chelsea. Then the other part, Tottenham, interesting. It's like second year, they're going to be better. They're not going to be better. They're going to be a decent team. They're going to whoop up on some teams. The style of football, playing a high line at that level, they're going to get caught by decent, good teams. Aston Villa would probably beat them. Newcastle on a good day just beat them, would beat them again. Chelsea can beat them at any time. It's basically equal. Then the big boys would usually, in my opinion, be favored against Tottenham. So I'm not huge on this Ange hype. It's a football that's nice to watch. It does not winning football at all, not in my opinion, for Tottenham. Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City. Then for Manchester United, that's interesting. I think the problem with Manchester United is all management. The fact that they allowed Ten Hag to come back again, they're paying the price for it, and I'm fine with that. There's there's nothing else. It's going to be a very inconsistent team, a team with full lack of accountability. It starts from the top all the way to Ten Hag and the players as well. Nothing is going to change. They're going to have one good game, and he will tell you to look at that good game and ignore all other ones that they are not playing up to par. So that's my own opinion about Manchester United. I'm going to enjoy it anyway. And I genuinely don't want to keep pouring on my Manchester United fans and friends because I have lots of them. But in general, if I tell you I'm not enjoying it, that is absolutely not true. It has been a wonderful over 10 years of watching football since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. I'm telling you, like, goodness, I've enjoyed watching football since he retired. Before he retired, it was an absolute disaster watching football, watching Manchester United win. But I would say it's been a great few years here for me, in my opinion. But I would say that's what I think about the top teams currently and how the season has started. Most importantly, Erling Haaland is going to be a problem. And we all knew this, but he's firing again. So I think that's something else to look at in that instance. So yeah, so that will be the thoughts. Wanted to get to the other thing we wanted to talk about. So the transfer window closed for most of Europe at the end of last month, basically getting into this year. So now at least there's a little bit of stability. We know where players are, and I wanted us to just discuss a few of the biggest transfers to teams. I'm going to start from like the big boys. We all know, like, the rich getting richer, right? So I'm going to start from Real Madrid. The two main or major transfers into Real Madrid this year. I want to get your opinion on that, and I'll give my take on that as well. Kylian Mbappe coming in from PSG, and Endrick from Palmeiras also coming in to Real Madrid. How do you think these two players will impact them, and generally, what do you think about Real Madrid this season?
No, I think I'll start with, of course, the biggest move over the summer, which was Mbappe to Real Madrid. And that has been the biggest open secret that has existed for the past 45 years. We all knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. And all the back and forth that happened, especially in the last 2 years before this eventual move, just heightened, the excitement, at least on the side of the fans of Madrid. Somewhere also on the other side of the spectrum, where it was like, we are winning without him, so what is he likely coming to add to us this time around? But I think the movement of Mbappe from PSG to Madrid has been just the tradition of Madrid, and then building the Galacticos since time immemorial. So it is nothing new, and what we are looking forward to is how impactful Mbappe can be as he joins this setup. And I believe he's joined at the time where there couldn't be a better manager to be at the helm than Ancelotti, because he's been at the cusp of such situations in the past, and he's managed them quite well, from AC Milan to Chelsea, managing big egos, to Juventus. He's been there, he's done that. So having Mbappe joining the fold, to me, of course, it makes Madrid even more scarier. But then we'll have to see how things will play out, because Mbappe hasn't hit the ground running as everybody expected him to. But before the break, he scored 2 goals, which I think got the monkey off his back, and at least positions him quite well to come and perhaps continue his form when the season resumes this weekend. Over the past 2 games in the international break, he hasn't been at his absolute best either. But we are just hoping that this will just be a purple patch for the Mbappe we know, and then he can hit the ground running when he gets back over the weekend. And for Endrick's story is more or less like, the little boy who we never see him play, but the hype is off the roof.
Right? Now we're gonna see him play, right?
It's like almost every time we see him, it's like a black and white picture of him that depicts him being raised like Pele or from like an ancient time. And it's like almost everything we know about him is outside of the reason why we should know him, which is football. Right? But then before the international break, he also opened his account with Madrid. I do not expect him to start as many games. But then I would want to trust Ancelotti to ease him in slowly, with minutes, or like what we tend to call garbage minutes, in the La Liga, and then possibly in other competitions, because they'll be playing a lot of competitions. But then the Endrick transfer, of course, for the money that Madrid paid, they paid a premium, and I think it is again a testament to how much they rate the talent that the boy has. And there was a bidding war, actually, because Manchester United was interested, Chelsea was interested at some point too. So I think in the footballing fraternity places a premium on him. But the elite clubs were looking for him. And
and he had this stretch where he came in as substitutes for Brazil and stuff and just made an impact. And I'm guessing everybody's like, I don't want to miss out on that. Remember when Neymar also was coming out of Brazil and the hype? So that must be like a race to get that talent.
Exactly. I think it was more of, again, as you mentioned, the fear of missing out.
Yep.
Right. And Madrid, of course, the biggest of clubs that exist, had the muscle to just whip him in, and he's joined them. So at the moment, I think Endrick has joined us at a very good time, because a lot of the pressure is not going to be on him.
Yep.
Understandably so. He's a very young boy, 18 years. I think 16 or 17.
Yeah, about 17.
Right? And there's a bigger fish in the net that the media is going to scrutinize very, very keenly, which is Mbappe. So that takes a lot of pressure off him and gives him the room to express himself when given the chance to come and play. So for the team, Endrick, Mbappe, they look like good signings on paper. But just like Eden Hazard at some time back, we'll have to see how things will play out, especially for him.
Eden Hazard, that's a good name that you bring up there. Chelsea got the best out of him and gave Real Madrid whatever was left.
Yes.
Great deal. What a deal. Well, that was when Abramovich was there. Those things, we're not seeing it anymore. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to go now to, I would say, one of the more popular teams in the world. We talked about them a little bit, which is Manchester United. And we're going to talk about their transfers and how you think that will impact them. We got Joshua Zirkzee coming into Man U. We got Manuel Ugarte to Man U as well. And they got De Ligt and Mazraoui from Bayern Munich coming into the team. Those are just to mention 4 of the top names coming into Manchester United. I'm going to let you go first. What do you think? Before you go, I'm just going to give my thoughts on Madrid. I think you said it all. There's really not much I want to say. The pressure is going to be on Mbappe. Endrick is going to have time to settle in. But yeah, for Manchester United, what do you think?
No, I think for United, it is an interesting thing, because it is very, very obvious that Ten Hag has a strong affinity for players he's worked with in the past. Because
that doesn't. He doesn't make them play well.
No,
Anthony's an example.
I'm building a point. Right. So quite obviously, almost all the signings he's made during this window are all players he's trained in the past. As to whether they would hit the ground running, evidence obviously shows us that it is not the case. Because Anthony has been a disaster. All the signings he's made since he came in. The only player that I would say has
Casemiro,
slightly above average would be Martinez. The butcher, the defender.
Which one? Lisandro Martinez.
Martinez. He's been the only one that has been decent. Outside him,
it's amazing how good he is too for his height and all that. Playing centre back. Yeah,
he's been the only decent signing for Ten Hag so far. Mason Mount has been rubbish. What's his name? Anthony has been an absolute disaster. And then a host of other signings that Ten Hag has made over time. So I'm looking at this new crop that is coming in with some skepticism, because history, at least per the past 2 years, has shown that his signings haven't been the best in terms of impact or coming in and then making things happen for the team. The players that have still been making things happen have been the old boys. Of course, the main star, which is Bruno Fernandes, and then Rashford had his usual purple patch where he hit 30 goals and then he just went into oblivion again as usual, right? So it has been a hit or miss, And with the current boys that have come in, at least with the games that I've watched of United so far, Mazraoui seems to be like a good addition. At least on the left, he's been very, 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 very useful and quite impactful. At least with the games that I watched, even though the last 2 games they lost, but when I watched him individually, he seemed to be someone that I believe can add to the United team. Euro got hurt, so we can't tell. Zexi, he says he doesn't know his position, whether he's a 10 or he's a 9. So he's a 9.5. So we'll see. 9.5. So we'll see how that would also play out with Zexi. And with De Ligt, I am not too convinced about De Ligt. He went to Juventus. He couldn't replicate his Ajax form. He went to Bayern Munich, of all places. He couldn't live up to the billing. And I am just not too sure whether he's going to be an upgrade over Maguire, but we live to see.
We'll find out.
Exactly. But then maybe, just maybe, they can bank. Okay, Lisandro Martinez didn't play with De Ligt, but then maybe, just maybe, they can maybe form a connection and then be able to do something for the team. But for United, I am not too sold on their signings so far.
Yeah, for me, I would say we got to wait and see, right? So they brought in people to try to shake things up, probably very important. The most important signing that for me that needs to work and that has to work if they're going to have any success with Emmanuel Ugarte, right? In midfield.
Yes.
That has to work. I haven't seen him play too much except for the national team, but because I think their midfield with Casemiro is below standard. Kobe Meno is a pretty good player. So if Ugarte can come in and be a good box-to-box midfielder for them, maybe that can actually make some significant improvements. I think that's the one player I look at and I'm like, Mayu should hope that player works and maybe they have a chance.
That's true.
Yeah, for them. So that would be for Chelsea. You're gonna go to Chelsea, and that would be for Manchester United. We're gonna go to Chelsea now, buying every single player they can get their hands on. I'm just gonna note out a few players that are currently gonna be in Chelsea after the transfer window. There's Jadon Sancho coming to Chelsea from Manchester United. We got Raheem Sterling. We got João Felix coming to Chelsea, and also Pedro Neto to Chelsea. I know they buy and they have a lot of players. How do you think these players and the other players in the transfer window impacts Chelsea's season?
I don't know. I'll be speaking as a Chelsea fan, so perhaps my opinions will be a little more critical as compared to the other teams. And I just do not see any light at the tunnel, at least for this Chelsea team, for the time being. Given the fact that, again, they're starting from scratch. It's a new manager who wants to implement things. And then there are new signings, and almost all of them seem to be on the wide areas. So there's so much of an overload in the wide areas. And the main things that had to be addressed all through the window was not addressed. Of course, I believe we'll touch on Osimhen a little later. But it has been an open secret that Chelsea's front line, especially the out-and-out striking position, has not been living up to the billing. Yes, Jackson scored 15 goals last season, but he missed almost 2,000 of them. And if you want to do very well in the league, there's a need for your front line to be firing on all cylinders. And Chelsea barely addressed that concern. And then the second thing too has been, at least with what we've seen so far from pre-season to the beginning of the season, Chelsea's defense is extremely porous. And that hasn't been addressed. And almost all the signings that have been made so far are on the wide areas. So I'm just curious to see how Enzo Maresca is going to make things work with this team and maintain harmony in the team, because that is where the biggest concern is, maintaining harmony and then churning out results, because he has to hit the ground running. Chelsea finished 6th last season, and anything below that is likely going to be a failure. So it is up in the air, and we'll just hopefully get to see how the season plays out for Chelsea.
Yeah. So in your opinion, do you think Chelsea can be a top 4 team this year? That's considering Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. Then you got Man U, Tottenham, Newcastle, Aston Villa also chasing those positions.
Yeah, I don't see why they can't compete, because even last season there was a lot of openings for the team to creep into the top four, but of course there were so many poor results along the line, and that is how the English Premier League has always been. The fact that you are losing, apart from the people that are heavily competing, more often than not, the others that are trying to clinch top four also drop points quite sporadically, right? So there's a need for some level of consistency. If you're able to hit a certain patch of form, you win like 7, 8, 9, 10 in a row, it puts you in a very, very good position, because the teams around you are most likely going to drop points. They always do, right? So with this, I think, yes, the Chelsea should be knocking on the top four door. Anything outside that, to me, is going to be a failure of a season.
Okay, when it comes to Chelsea, I just think a lot of the signings are just business deals, not actual football transactions to actually win on the football pitch. And I think that has a lot to do with the dysfunction at the very top and the issues at the very top between Clear Lake Capital and Todd Bowley and all of that whole conversation or dysfunction going on right there at the top. But I'm not looking at Chelsea and having a lot of expectations for them this year. Fourth position would be an absolute miracle if that actually turns out. Quality players, but what do you do with them? That's a good question for Chelsea to answer this year and for Enzo Maresca to actually figure out. The other couple of clubs we're going to look at their transfers will be Arsenal bringing in Calafiori from Bologna and also Raheem Sterling on loan. Basically, to Arsenal from Chelsea on loan. How do you think these two transfers or the transfer business Arsenal did can impact their chances of challenging for the title, which they were very close? And I thought they did a fantastic job to push Man City till the very end last year.
Well, I think, as I mentioned in my earlier submission, I think Arsenal is going to be up there and trying to push the envelope and seeing how best they can go, maybe shoulder for shoulder against Man City. So we'll have to see how that would play out. And looking at the signings and how that might add to what Arsenal already has in making this push. Calafiori, a lot of people haven't watched him as extensively, maybe until the Euros. But then his stock has been rising ever since his time at Basel. And then the blockbuster season Thiago Motta had with Bologna, and most of the players that did very well there.
And they're all leaving too.
Exactly, from Zegzi to Calafiori, and then a host of other players that have left. So with Calafiori, I think he adds something to the team, of course, because last season players like this Ukrainian guy.
In which club?
Arsenal's Ukrainian fullback.
Oh, Zinchenko?
Zinchenko was terrible for the most part, right? Yeah. So having a player like Calafiori come in who can invert into, at least now that most of the managers are trying to invest most of their wide players into the field to add to the numbers in the field, and then seeing his performance, at least having a glimpse of what he can do during the Euros, it gives Arsenal fans a lot to be excited about. And we only again live to see how he would adapt to the league, because moving from Italy to the Premier League can be a bit of a jump. But given the Arsenal setup at the moment, I don't think he would have to do a lot of groundswork in terms of settling in, because the team is already a well-oiled machine. He just has to add to it. And in talking about well-oiled machines and adding to it, of course, Raheem Sterling comes into the picture. And Sterling, obviously, for his status and then what he's achieved as a player, would always precede him. His reputation is up there with some of the very best that have played in very recent years in the league. So with his experience profile, joining this Arsenal setup, he's always going to add something to the team. As to whether it would be as impactful or not, it would leave that to chance, because Sterling over the past 2 to 3 seasons hasn't been the Sterling we've known in the past, right? So it would still be up there in the air. I am tipping Sterling to have a bit of an impact like Trossard did when he first joined, because Sterling happens to be a very direct player. He just goes straight into the box. He can be wasteful for the most part, But he also has a knack for drawing players to himself and then winning penalties and whatnot, which I believe would come in very handy for this Arsenal setup or the Arsenal team. So you can never go wrong with having a multiple Premier League winner in your dressing room. It always adds to it. As to whether it would be enough to push Arsenal to compete like shoulder to shoulder against Man City, would only get to see as the season unfolds. But with these two signings, I believe Arsenal has given themselves a chance to
and also Jurriën Timber is going to be back for the team, considering he didn't play almost all of last year because of the injury. So that's a huge addition to their defense as well.
No, it's a good addition. As to whether he can disrupt the current
setup,
formidable setup that exists in the center of the defense, which is Gabriel and Saliba. As to whether he can upset that, we can't tell. But then on the flip side,
he could play right back where White plays.
White plays quite well. So, and then on the other hand, there's Calafiori, right? So, there is a lot of richness in depth, and that is what Arsenal has at the moment. So it is something they can always fall back on because they are playing a lot of competitions. If you want to add the new format of the Champions League as well, which means more games, and then the need for fresher legs. So
important depth is going to be big this year.
Absolutely.
I'm very curious how teams are going to adjust to that. Probably in a future episode, we could talk about that as Champions League unfolds. I'm just one point I want to make outside of what you just said. I think Sterling's impact is going to be felt with the familiarity he already has with Mikel Arteta coming from Man City. I think that's going to be the big impact. They are familiar with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They should be able to communicate better and kind of know the role he's going to play, come in, have impactful roles, understands what Sterling is good at, and maybe what he might be struggling with at this stage of his career. And then finally, we're just going to look at Man City transactions, the big ones. Julian Alvarez moving to Atletico Madrid. And we're going to talk about the issues he had with Pep Guardiola, considering he didn't play in the biggest game last year in the Champions League and stuff like that. And also getting Gundogan back on a free for Man City, and also they're signing Savinho, which I have been pleasantly surprised at how good. To me personally, unknown player to me has been for Man City. What do you think about Man City's transactions, starting from leaving the club in an important player, in my opinion, in Julian Alvarez?
I think I'll start from Savinho, and
okay.
I am not surprised people are surprised, because for those of us that watched him in Girona, it was very obvious that he was going to come in.
I'm going to make a point. Girona was a team that was very interesting to me last year. I kind of enjoyed watching their games, but I remember one game, Yan Couto was embarrassed by Vinicius. I died that day. Like, Vinicius just literally embarrassed the young man. I watched the game, and that was all I could. It was like, just come on to me. Him, Bellingham, 3 goals. Like, they were just... But go ahead. I just couldn't... But go ahead, yeah.
With Savinho and with how Girona played last season, and of course, Girona is part of the City football group. Have going on for them, right? So it was more or less like a carbon copy of what you expect, because the setup is not extremely different in Girona as it is in City, right? So I am not surprised that people are surprised, but I'm glad at least he's hit the ground running quite nicely, and it is no surprise that there's a strong similarity between him and Mahrez, right? From their build to how they hold the ball and how they play on a counter, how they take on players. It's a beautiful thing to see, right? So at least for Savinho, I'm tipping him to do quite well. For Gundogan, we know what to expect. There's no need to look further than what he can do.
Mr. Reliable, in my opinion.
Especially when the season is about to end, he knows how to turn it up, right? So it is one thing.
He can start for a long time. He can come off the bench.
Absolutely.
My God.
We know there's a saying back home in Ghana that for someone you know during the day, you don't try to look at their face with a torch at night, because you know already, right? So you don't put the torch on their faces just to see who is this, because you know them, and that is what's going to be. So I won't spend too much time on Gundogan, because we know what to expect with him, And on the other hand, which is Alvarez leaving due to these issues he's had. One thing I've admired about how City has built the club, especially when Tixi came in from Barcelona and then Pep came in. And if you watch even their three-peat on Netflix, there is this way in which the club is being run as a family. So if you feel like you can't be a part of it anymore, they won't hold you.
Yes. The door is always open to leave, yeah.
Always open to everybody.
Even when David Silva wanted to leave and there was a situation, there was Aguero had to leave. They really have, I think that's where Pep Guardiola, I have to give him credit, is his ability to, in trying to foster his own selfish ambitions, actually allows the players to choose either to be there or not to be there. I genuinely do admire that specific part, even though he tries to read out false stats on me. Like, I don't know.
Don't go to that part. The last part.
Yeah, go ahead.
From last season, Cole Palmer leaving. And then, why is he selling him? He was a hit, at least in his first season at Chelsea. And there's now, of course,
Alvarez, very important player too. Mahrez also wanted to leave to Saudi Arabia. Very important player, huge role. But if you want to leave,
right,
we'll support you to get out. Yeah,
such a way that Pep is the superstar.
Yeah,
right. So it's the opposite. The coach is the superstar. You come in because of him. So if you come, you spend your time, and then you feel you feel you are good enough to want to play alone elsewhere, he won't stand in your way because the system is there. And anybody he brings in is likely to fit in quite seamlessly. And
I agree. There are some important players like De Bruyne, which I think
he will leave.
Oh yeah, no, I get that, right? But I think a criticism I had for Pep last year was playing De Bruyne when it was obvious he was injured because he needed to win a lowly Burnley. That was beginning of last year. It was clear the guy was struggling with an injury, but he needed his best player to win Burnley. So it's a little thing that I have, but I know it's not because De Bruyne cannot leave. It's not his style, but I also feel like he needs De Bruyne a lot.
No, but the other challenge that also existed was Gundogan was not replaced.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Also, always going to be the over-reliance on Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah.
Of the pack. Yes, there's Bernardo Silva, but Bernardo tends to drift more to
the wing.
To the wings, right? Leaving the middle open, right? So there's a need for at least someone, a tried and tested person to get the job done. And I think with Gundogan coming back, it will now give Pep some breathing room to allow De Bruyne to recover because he's been getting injured quite consistently over the past few seasons.
Yes, that's why I said that was a big move for me. I think getting Gundogan to come back to the team, because that was my criticism. Like, I know I've talked a lot about Pep. I was like, Gundogan left last year and you need him a lot. And this guy is not healthy. It's also your job as a coach to help protect De Bruyne. It really, like for me, I was pissed. But for De Bruyne's injury, because I love watching De Bruyne play. In as much as I say all these things, I want the best players to play. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, I just felt like it was a very selfish decision because you don't have Gundogan, that you couldn't put a less of a player in quote unquote to actually stand in against Burnley. That was my problem. My problem wasn't it was a big team. You would win Burnley without playing De Bruyne. That was my opinion, right? Like any coach should, and that's what bothers me about his mindset. You should be confident enough to play Burnley without De Bruyne, in my opinion, as at that first game that he got injured. And now we can look back at it that he got injured, but I would have still been pissed whether he got injured or not, that De Bruyne played that game against Burnley, first game of the year, dealing with an injury, right? And to me, that is where I get it that he's very whatever, but I also think there's a system to the madness, or a madness to the coordinated system. You know what I mean? But yeah, and I think that's why I think Gundogan is an important.
Yeah. No, again, I think I'd want to wrap up just by saying that, of course, very valid point. In terms of how he's used De Bruyne over time, and obviously De Bruyne is like a big a big part of the spine of his team, right? I can argue that De Bruyne is his Messi in
Yes,
the
in the way that he plays his game and all that. Even look at the impact of when De Bruyne plays on Erling Haaland goals and Erling Haaland's impact. You know what I mean? So it kind of matches up.
Exactly. So I'll just wrap up by saying that, of course, there's, of course, with Julian Alvarez leaving, he hasn't been as effective since moving to Atletico, but again, the season has just started, so we give it time. But then, yeah, I just foresee Man City doing very well as usual. I think it has now become a norm. So talking about them is just like we are saying the same thing over again and over again, right?
Yeah.
So long as Haaland is still fit, I'm sure they're going to do well. And even if Haaland is not, Man City has won the league without an out-and-out striker in the past. So I can't put it past them to do it again, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna wrap up there. Basically for this first one, I think it was fun. It was great.
That was
I had a few. Yeah, I had a good time. We're gonna be doing this as much as possible. Don't forget, if you're watching up to here, I appreciate you. We do. My name is CT Dice, and with me is Daniel. So with me is Daniel. Basically, we're gonna go through this. Have a good time. Any final words before we call it quits on this episode?
Then my final words would be that for all football fans across the world, I know these are exciting times because there's a lot of games to watch and then a lot more to come going forward from the Champions League, Conference League, and then every other Europa League, all the other leagues that exist, qualifiers and whatnot. So it is my hope that as a football connoisseur, you guys also get excitement that comes with all of the games, and then the heartbreaks, of course, that comes with the defeats and then the disappointments your teams are likely to inflict on you. I'm expecting mine, so I have gone for an insurance for my and that is with Chelsea. But then, yeah, on that is on the lighter side. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and just as we've started this new series, we are starting on a very flat foot, and we are hoping to grow with you as our audience. So please subscribe, and do not hesitate to share these videos with your friends, your family, the football lovers across the world, and continue the debates in your close circles about most of the things we talk about. And just tune in, look forward to our next uploads. Subscribe, put on your post notification just so you get to be notified and be some of the first people to enjoy the conversations we have for you. And yes, do not stop watching the game, because the game is
absolutely don't. And one final parting word from me is: do not take it too personally, guys. It's sports. Let's have a good time. Have a good time. Enjoy your victories. Take your heartbreaks and wake up the next morning with smile. We have a good time about it.
Very simple.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. Don't forget, as he said, subscribe, like, share, comment. Put your opinion out there. Let's talk about it. Let's have a good time. It's sports. We love this. It's football, It's old as much as I can remember, at least all my life. I'm probably a few generations ahead of me. But basically, let's have some fun. Let's get into it. The season is just starting. It's 2024-2025 football season, and we're all here for it. Let's have a good time. Peace.